Hi, Robin and Jen here with Hungry for More, and we are back to talk to you about a relationship that you have that may not be that healthy. And the thing is see if you can relate to this. One of the very first things that people get worried about when we start working with them is, what are you going to take away from me that brings me pleasure and joy? And maybe you can relate to that with food. Like if you were going to start a diet on Monday, Sunday night, you were going to make sure you ate everything you could of things that you wouldn't be permitted to eat on the new diet plan that you were starting. So today, that's what we want to talk to you about. Can pleasure and eating coexist and you still be happy and still be satisfied with what we do? You know, one of the very first things that people have a lot of fear towards this, right? Have you ever heard somebody say, oh, I even look at that and I gained 5 pounds?
Right.
I have said that. Not have I just heard people say it. I have said that in my life. I have been a person where I say, I can't even have a bite, because if I have a bite of that, I'll eat the whole pan. Or, and there was no joy in that, right? At the end, there was no pleasure. And maybe it tasted good when I started, but the pleasure didn't come. So, Robin, why do we have this belief? Why does this belief come where we think that in order to be conscious eater and to be completely in tune, like, why do we have that mentality of thinking I can't have this and have this? It's one or the other.
Yeah. I think one of the fundamental, sadness and errors that come from diet culture is the belief that pleasure and health can't coexist. If you want to get healthy, well, then say goodbye to the pleasurable things, to the pleasurable foods in your life, right? And that takes us to extremes. It takes us to deprivation. It takes us to anxiety, where we really truly feel like something special to us is getting taken away. And we perpetuate this with the diets where we say, yeah, let's, go off it completely, or you can't have this, or you're allowed to, but just this much, or this one set apart special moment. And all of these belief systems have perpetuated this, and it's created a really unhealthy relationship with food, with treats, with pleasure.
Right.
And that is something that, needs healing. As conscious eaters, we seek out, that's not our approach. We seek out to heal this relationship so you do understand what pleasure is. We also tend to think pleasure is just saying, I can have whatever I want whenever I want and screw it. And that's also not pleasure. So we have a very skewed, distorted relationship to pleasure. And in order to live in that balance of health and pleasure, we need to change our relationship to it.
Right. Because the problem is living in the extreme. We're extreme one way or extreme the other way, where there is a really happy place to feel pleasure, to feel gratification, and have the best of both, and still treat yourself with respect and walk away feeling really good. And we're going to talk about that more in the next podcast episode, going on extremes and how to stop doing that. I feel really bad every time we do these episodes. I'm like, yep, that was me. Yep, that was me. Like, actually, I don't feel bad. I'm living proof that you can get to the other side of that. But I literally, every one of these things can relate to. So, and I remember back when we talked, I eat a way that I love, and I feel really good the way I eat. And you actually made the comment to me. You said to me, yes, Jen, but everybody you coach is not going to eat that way every moment of every day for the rest of their life, even if you do, which I do not, but I did more so then, I think. And I don't do that as much now. But she said, so the reality is you have to be able to have both in your life, unless you're going to really eat this way every time you eat for the very rest of your life, then that's not a real reality.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, as far as, okay, I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to do this plan. I just purchased this program, whatever it is. And I just have to be strong during this time because I'm going to have to give these things up. That's okay. I'm going to be strong during this time. If your intention is ever to go back to eating pleasurable foods, treats, then going off them for 12 weeks or whatever is not going to cure that relationship. It's just going to have you setting it aside, building that dam against it that we talked about a few episodes back. And when you're reintroduced to them, it usually doesn't go well, right? Our energy towards them is just so charged and our behavior matches that. And so listen, there's certain things in my life, like drugs. I feel pretty compelling reasons that I don't want to have drugs. I've even made that decision with alcohol. Now, I am so convicted with that I'm willing to be ostracized. I'm willing to miss out on opportunities. I'm willing to be made fun of even, right? And so I am able to be strong in those because I am so convicted and I have compelling reasons that matter a lot to me. Not that I think everybody else should, but that is mine. And that is what enables me to be successful. Oh,
I'm on mute. Sorry. And that's a really good point to make, that there are things that, yes, I too will never touch. It's not, it has nothing to do with pleasure or wanting that. It's just, I don't want it.
yeah. But for most of us, me included, I have not arrived to the point that I have this compelling reason that I'm never again going to have a dessert or to have a treat. Okay. So when we're talking about pleasure foods, there is a lot of pleasure to be found, and I find great pleasure in wholesome, nutritious food for sure. But when we're speaking of pleasure eats, we're pointing towards that. This is the idea, yeah, these are the foods we're talking about in this context. I have not made that decision. I've not arrived to that. And so if that's true, if I'm not going to just give them up forever for reasons I'm convicted for, then I better figure out how to coexist with them in a healthy balance, right? And this cycling of depriving and then arriving maybe where you want to be and then going back to them, that's what has us in such an unhealthy, frustrated relationship where a lot of guilt is involved with these foods, a lot of, pain, physical pain is involved with these foods. So if you're not going to give them up forever, friends, then you want to learn how to heal your relationship to pleasure. And the first step really is to recognize that health and pleasure can coexist. You can lose weight and you don't have to 100% never eat treats in order to arrive at your goal while you're in that process. And we have to see that. And again, that's not the views we've been taught on that doesn't support that, right? Like you have to throw away those foods, go through your pantry. Before you start this on Monday, go through and throw everything away that's pleasurable, that tempts you, that you can't trust yourself with. Go and get rid of it all. The messaging is so much about distrust with self. And also, again, like you aren't safe with pleasure.
Right. Yeah. No, been there. I remember saying, we've got to eat all this food because we're starting on Monday. It wasn't throw it out. It was like, let's eat it all.
Oh, yeah, totally. Well, I don't know who originally coined this. I can't take credit for this, but the Last Supper, we all know what that is. And you alluded to that at the beginning. When you know something's coming and it's going to get taken away, it's kind of like, let me know what I need to fill up on this week because I'm going to go without. And we don't have to live like that in order. You can lose weight while still having a healthy relationship to pleasure. So that segues me into talking about how I have always found it interesting since doing this work and, how much we think about it and observe things. Have you noticed like the basic survival activities all come with an element of pleasure involved? Right. And that is really interesting to me and telling, like, procreation, sex, that has a function of survival that we need to keep bringing the humans and perpetuate
people coming to Earth, right?
Yeah, that has a function, but also there's an element of pleasure by design, as part of that. Tell me, I know you're a checklist girl. Tell me about how accomplishing things, how does that relate to survival and what's the pleasure?
Well, yeah, if I have a list of things to do or I have a goal I'm trying to accomplish, I find great pleasure as I check off things that are getting me there. So, or even, you're at the gym and you're trying to reach a goal of weight that you could lift or anything. Yes, you're working to achieve that goal, but the pleasure comes from the gratification of getting there.
Yes, you are rewarded for doing activities that advance you, that evolve you, that expand you. We get, by nature, by design, a pleasurable reward for that in the brain.
Right. And they come both. Yeah, you come both. And at the same time, it's not pleasure all the time. Right. It's a little bit here. It's just enough.
Right. And nature has that healthy balance.
Yeah.
Right. When the two examples we just gave, there's a healthy balance to that. It's not about nature's not going, go get that pleasure now. In fact, by design, we can't even do that, and so that's interesting. So how does that tie into food? Same thing. The basic function of eating, yes, it's to literally keep you alive and give you the energy that you need to keep going. Right. But there is a built-in, by design, element of pleasure that we are rewarded with. Now, we are rewarded with regular good dopamine hits when we're eating whole good foods that feel nourishing to us. Right. And then, yes, pleasurable foods can give us more, and that's what makes us kind of want them more. And, there's an understanding for that, but there's also a place for that you can find, a healthy balance with.
Right. And we'll address that in the balance when we talk about extremes next week, because
Yeah.
it is possible to have some without eating it all and still feel completely satisfied and not deprived. So,
Right. Yes, we will dig deeper into that. Now, so we, talking about changing this relationship to pleasure, healing it. I want you guys to really think about your experience with pleasure foods. How often do you feel guilty? How often are you beating yourself up? Like, you shouldn't do that. Or, so many times we've heard people say, oh, they'll tell us the experience they had and say, I know I should have chose the healthier thing.
yeah, there's a guilty pleasure.
Guilt, their shame into that. I've even in coaching seen people feel guilty for wanting it in the
Yeah,
first place. Why do I want this? And feeling, shame around that. And so
right.
that is not how it was meant to be. And all that guilt and shame comes from our distorted thinking, again, that they can't coexist. Or if you want health, you can't have this. And so we're going to teach you now, we're just going to go over 3 points here that we want to go over to start pushing you in that direction of healing this relationship. Of course, a lot of the healing comes in the coaching when you have these experiences with food, and the coaching we do around that as you bring the actual thoughts going through your mind to us, we can make a big impact. But these things we're teaching you now are really good guidelines to help you get started to make this change, so that you can, when you do decide to have the pleasurable thing, it can truly be that pleasurable, not a shameful experience.
Right.
So why don't you talk to us about the first one, about when you have decided to eat, the energy you want to be in.
Yeah, when you've decided to eat, it's the energy that you take in with it, being energetically calm and kind of pausing and relaxing. It's that whole, we've talked about a Adami in the past, right? If the energy we come in with is really like up there, then the energy we eat with is going to be up there also. So
And it
kind
won't
of,
be pleasurable.
no, it won't be pleasurable, and it will be a lot harder to manage in that
Yes.
moment. Whereas if you can pause and calm and come down to it and be calm when you go in with that and just enjoy it, it's a lot easier, one, to listen and to pay attention to your body, so you know when you're done and when you're satisfied, but also just not to have that energy charging behind you that makes it just that frantic frenzy.
Well, so that's number one, your energetics you're bringing into. If you're noticing yourself uptight, it's not about like, oh, you're not allowed to have this food. It's saying, I'm not going to experience this food while I'm here, because like you said, we won't enjoy it. And I know a lot of times people are in that energy because they're so afraid of how they're going to act and behave that they just want to hurry and get it over with. They just want to get it over with and get done and not be with themselves and the guilt of it. And so they're checked out. And when you're checked out, when you're disassociated, you can't be with the pleasure, which is the whole reason you're having, reaching for it in the first place.
Right.
One thing I just wanted to add a comment to that is liking your reason for it. And that goes along with the energy, right? So we've taught you already that if we're eating because we're trying to just avoid an emotion, that's really not pleasure. If we're eating again out of that damn energy, that's not pleasure. And if we're just mindlessly eating and not even in tune, we're not really getting pleasure out of it.
Yeah.
So the second thing is to be mindful as you eat, to be like, how does this taste? I'm enjoying this, to really get what you're going for here. And that's pleasure, not rushing yourself through to get it over with. And then I'll be good after, or I'll beat myself after and I'll correct myself and I'll strategize how I'm going to make up for this after. It's being mindful. It's being in the body. And the other reason you want to do that, besides being with the pleasure of it, is so that you can be in tune when the body cues you and says, holy cow, that was amazing. Yeah. Please stop. Yeah. And that's the third thing.
Yeah. The third thing is to stop and to listen to that cue. And it's funny because with the pleasure, that moment where you're eating a dessert or something and it's really delicious and you're like, yeah, I've had enough, but there's 3 more bites left.
Right.
And then it's kind of like, once that happens, it's not super pleasurable.
Right. If you
not
keep
enjoyable.
going.
If you keep going. So listening to those body cues is so incredibly important.
Right. If we're wanting this because we're wanting to experience pleasure, let's give that to ourselves, which includes being in tune with the body saying, oh, loved it. Thank you. Please don't eat anymore. Because when we have a stomach ache after, I remember going to bed, just like feeling my stomach turning, or like there's a rock. Usually when I overate treats, it'd feel like this rock in my stomach. Mm-hmm. That's not pleasure. I didn't experience what I wanted.
Right.
there's remorse for that after, right? On a
Sitting in the restaurant and unbuttoning your top button.
yes, yes, exactly. And so these three, kind of guidelines or tips or things to be mindful of are really going to help you start shifting in your relationship to pleasure. You do not have to believe that treats and those pleasure foods are evil and terrible if you intend to have them. Right. Those might be used for people who are like, I will never again eat sugar for these reasons. And I believe they're evil. Well, then that will support you and never having it again. But we're speaking to people who want to be healthy. They want to lose weight and maintain a weight and still be able
to have their treats when they want them. So let's recap. So number one is to energetically bring calm, right? Yes. Be calm around that. Number two is to be mindful while you're eating it. And number three is to listen to your body cues and stop when your body says you're done.
Right. And our favorite question, one of our favorite questions is when that mind is like, but I want to keep eating, but I want to keep eating. And the body's like, I said, stop. The question that makes it all clear is, okay, do I want to honor my body or do I honor my mind? And that really helps being able to push those last few bites that will take you over the edge. And the pleasure will be ruined. It helps you set it aside. And I love it because it's not about the food. It's not about like, oh, I'll eat less calories if I cut this in half. It's truly about honoring the body in the request for pleasure, but then also when the body says that's enough.
Right. And the one thing I wanted to add too is if I know I'm going to be having a treat, when I'm eating my meal preceding it, I actually don't eat till I'm full. I save room to allow for that treat or that pleasure food. And then I stop when I'm full. So I fit it into the same. It's not like I've eaten this full dinner, I'm full, and then I'm adding on top of it. It's all together. So
I'm so glad you shared that and that's how that's the balance. Right. That's how we make it work, where I recognize, I know for sure as I'm eating this meal that I'm going to want this dessert. I can work with it. I can leave room in my stomach so that dessert can come in and everything's good, right?
And you can get up and walk out of the restaurant and not have a tummy ache or feel the little extra waddle from your food baby. That's what we call it.
Right. Yeah. And what's beautiful about this is this connects beautifully to simple nutrition that we teach through our food funnel. In our food funnel, the foods directly correlate to the impact they have on your insulin. And what I love is there's a place for all of them, including the pleasure foods. And the funnel is just a great visual to help you learn how to manage within that. So, our hope for you, I'm actually really passionate about this topic because I've seen a lot of unnecessary suffering, of guilt and shame, and of feeling deprived, and of feeling confused and kind of hopeless. Like unless I can really kick this sugar thing or whatever, I can never fill in the blank, lose weight or be healthy. And so this is super passionate for me because it's not that you have to figure out how to never have that again. What the solution is how to create a healthy relationship with it. And friends, we are living examples. I lost my weight 4.5 years ago and have sustained it. And I lived in this balance. I did not live in the extremes as I lost the weight and as I've maintained it. So you can do it too, for sure.
Yes, everybody can do it. And it just takes a little bit of work and practice practice. So put this to the test. See if you can enjoy your foods this week with pleasure and being mindful and all the things that we talked about. And let us know how you do. And we will see you next week when we talk about the extreme side of things, when we're all or nothing kind of a mentality. So we will see you next week.
Very good.